Hey guys, good morning. Joe Madden here. I'm joined this morning by Brentley Romine, staff writer for the Golf Channel. Bentley, how's your morning going?
It's going pretty good. This is some impressive production.
Oh,
I've dabbled in StreamYard before, but it hasn't looked quite like this. So congrats.
Well, just a matter of setting up those templates and getting in those videos. So if you ever need a hand, I'm here to help you. But
perfect.
Let's start talking about you, Brentley, and what you have going on. Firstly, I want to hear how you got started in this industry.
For risk of not boring anyone, I'll keep it a little short. But basically, my introduction to the golf industry is started at a local paper in Orlando, Florida, the Orlando Sentinel. I worked there in college. Once I graduated, I was fortunate that one of my bosses there went over to Golf Week magazine, and at the time, and I think it still could be said, but Golf Week is one of the preeminent golf journalism outlets in the world, and so it was great to be able to go there for 8 or 9 years and kind of learn from the best. And then a few years back, ended up at Golf Channel and been here ever since. So I always tell people I didn't do anything too special to kind of advance my journey in this industry. I've just gotten really lucky and been around a lot of great people and learned from the best. So that's basically my story in a nutshell.
Okay, so where did the passion for writing come from?
I think the passion is more so just for sport and being kind of in that arena and the competitiveness of it, and just loving sports in general and not just golf, whether it be baseball or football, or I played water polo in high school and a little bit in college. So, I love all kinds of sports. And so writing was just kind of the natural way to get into that. Cause let's be honest, I wasn't ever going to make the PGA Tour or any professional league like that. So I figured might as well write about it. And I guess I'm not too bad at it because I still have a job. So just going to keep going.
Oh, that's fantastic. Well, congratulations on everything that you have going on. We had the President's Cup over the weekend. What takeaways did you have from that?
Well, I think a lot of people thought that it was going to be very one-sided. And I guess when you look at the final score and the U.S. winning by 5, it kind of was. But I don't think that told the whole story. I mean, the internationals for months have heard about how they just have no shot because of all the players going over to live golf. And I thought Trevor Immelman, their captain, did a great job of keeping things positive. And when they showed up at Quail Hollow this past week, they had a lot of fight and they got down early. I mean, they got punched in the mouth right away, lost that opening session 4-1, but they battled back. And I really felt watching the coverage yesterday, and I don't know how much of that was just me rooting for the underdog and really trying to keep things interesting, at least in my head, but it really felt like they had a shot up until the last, I don't know, maybe hour and a half of that. So if a few more matches could have gone the other way around, if Xander Schauffele doesn't hit that incredible shot after driving it in the water at 15, maybe it's a different story. So I felt that overall the score might not have been super close, but I think the internationals definitely surpassed all expectations that people had for him.
Yeah, most definitely. This is the 12th year in a row, though, that the U.S. has won the Presidential Cup. Do you think this is a trend that we're going to see staying, or do you think this internationals team in the next one has a better chance?
Yeah, it's tough to say, right? Because if you look at the history of the Ryder Cup and even the Walker Cup, which is the amateur event between the U.S. and Great Britain and Ireland, it started really lopsided for the first handful of decades for both of those events, and that's what we've seen at the President's Cup, right? I mean, in 14 editions, the U.S. are 12-1-1. I think there is a little bit of concern considering that Liv has poached so many great international players, and I guess U.S. players for that matter, away from this event. But I do think that there is hope, especially when we see the growth of the game in some of these countries. When you look at some of the top college players, I mean, you're starting to see guys from Peru and other South American countries. And I mean, Canada has always had, some strong young players. And though Taylor Pendrith and Corey Connors didn't play particularly well this week, I think the future is bright for both of those guys. It's tough though, right? Because you look at the U.S. and Jordan Spieth and Justin Thomas and Scotty Scheffler, Sam Burns. I mean, it seems like every year they just continue to roll these guys out there, and they're all still young. I mean, most of them are still in their 20s. Colin Morikawa, Sam Burns. I mean, those guys are really young, and you look at college golf, and yet I mentioned there's some great young international players, but there's a lot of good American players as well. So I anticipate that the trend continues for a while, but again, I mean, as long as the internationals keep showing up and keep having this kind of fight, I don't think they could be counted out.
Now, you mentioned the LIV. We have to talk about the LIV and the changes in the golfing world. Any thoughts here on the changes, if they're for a positive, in your mind?
Talking about the changes for like the PGA Tour in response to LIV?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think Rory McIlroy said it best, and I believe Justin Thomas talked about this as well. But there is, I think, a little bit of positive that has come out of this LIV thing, and that the PGA Tour has taken a step back, has kind of pulled in their best players, including Tiger Woods, and kind of gotten their thoughts and really used them as kind of like a sounding board, or really had this brainstorm session a couple months ago, or about a month ago, to try to figure out, hey, how can we get better? I mean, where is our product lacking? How can we compete with? I mean, frankly, LIV has unlimited pockets, so it's hard to compete, as Jay Monahan said, with a foreign investment fund that is willing to pay these players exorbitant amounts of money. But I do think these new changes that the tour has made are going to end up being a positive. You look at the fact that they're going to require their top players to play together more often. I mean, you see it. You've kind of seen it this past decade or so on tour. I mean, you turn on a tournament that's not a major on the PGA Tour, and you may only have 3 or 4 top 15 players playing in it. So this is going to guarantee that Rory McIlroy, Justin Thomas, Jordan Spieth, we're going to see those guys together more than just 6 or 7 times a year. It's going to be more like 10, 11, 12 times a year. So I think that's a positive. The players are going to be paid a lot more. It's not as much as LIV, but again, I mean, it's still a pretty good living if you have success on the PGA Tour. So that's another positive. And again, we talk so much about money, I think, these days, but there is still something to be said, I think, at least, in terms of tradition and being able to win events that Tiger Woods has won, or that Ben Hogan, Jack Nicklaus, Arnold Palmer have won. I think there's still a little bit of something there that I think LIV will have a little bit difficulty competing with in that aspect.
What do you think for the fan side of things? What do you think that has done for the golfing world? Do you think it's brought more fans in with the LIV?
It's tough to say, right? I mean, the YouTube numbers, I guess, on LIV aren't great right now, but I do think, I guess, that is a new subset of or subsection of fans that it's bringing in. But I think at the end of the day, and Patrick Cantlay talked about this prior to the President's Cup, in that having this fractured kind of environment right now is not good long-term for the game, where you have the best players kind of split up. So I think at some point there's going to need to be some sort of resolution. I don't know what that is. But I will say this. I think even before LIV, the interest in golf, even post-pandemic, you've seen it start to trend up, and you've seen more people start playing the game. And naturally, I mean, what do you do when you get interested in a sport and you start playing it? I mean, you might start watching it too, and watching the best at that craft. And so I think golf is what was in a great place. I still think it's in a great place. This is just, one of those bumps in the road that everyone's going to have to try to figure out.
Okay, well, let's talk some upcoming golf. We have the PGA kicking off the Sanderson Farms Championships on Thursday. Any look aheads for this? Any players you're really liking here?
Well, I think you got to start with Sam Burns, right? It's I think he might be kicking himself that he won this event last year, because he's got to come back and defend. I mean, I guess he doesn't have to, but you almost feel obligated, right? But it's going to be a rough early week for him, just in terms of the fact that I think that U.S. team and really everyone involved in the President's Cup last night probably partied a little hard last night. I think if you saw Max Homa's Twitter, Justin Thomas responded to that. they're feeling a little rough this morning, a little worse for the wear. But Sam Burns is a guy who has already proven that he can win on tour. I think he's a bona fide superstar, really does everything well. He's not just one of those guys who's going to ball strike it around. I mean, he's one of the top putters in the world. Has really been an elite player ever since he was 14 or 15. So he's a guy that is going to be the star of this field. But then you got some other exciting players. I mean, people were so concerned about the tour losing a Dustin Johnson or a Bryson DeChambeau. But I've always told people, I think the tour creates stars, and we're going to get a chance to see a guy like Sahith Theegala or Davis Riley. Both those guys are in this Sanderson field. We're going to get a chance to see, what they can do. And perhaps there's a little bit more opportunity for them to win events. And, as you know, the more you win, the more popular you become. And these guys have really great personalities too. I mean, if Sahith Theegala won 4 or 5 times in a season, I mean, he would be a rock star, because he's just such an interesting guy. He's such a nice guy, that I think it's going to be interesting to see what he can do this season. And even looking at some of the sponsor exemptions, I always like looking at the guys who get these invites, and maybe people don't know much about him, but there's a kid named Wilson Furr. He's from Jackson, Mississippi. This is his home club. He gets a sponsor exemption. He's been spending the last couple seasons kind of grinding on the developmental tours. I think he's been up in Canada a little bit. He was down in Latin America for that tour this past year. But he's a kid that started at the University of Alabama, which is a big football school, but also a big golf school down here in the States. And so he's a guy who could sneak up on people. So if you're looking for kind of a dark horse and a guy who really knows the course well, for those bettors, that he could be someone to maybe lay, a few bucks down at, big odds.
I like it. Brentley, is there anyone that you're looking at for this course that you think might show some struggles here that people seem to be a little bit high on, but that you're avoiding?
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, I haven't looked at all of the odds, but I would maybe look to Sam Burns, just because he's going to have, I mean, I don't know if he's the favorite or not, but he's obviously the highest ranked guy in the field. He's the defending champion. There's going to be a lot of expectations, but again, it's tough to, after a long week at Quail Hollow, it's a long golf course. There's a lot of demands outside the course. And of course, assuming that he had a little bit of fun last night, although I don't think he's too big into that. I just think it's going to be maybe a week where he might start strong, but I just don't know if, for the price tag, if he's going to be worth, in like DFS and stuff like that, worth kind of spending that much money on.
Yeah, absolutely. Brentley, I want to thank you so much for joining me here on the Joe Madden Sports Show. Can you tell everyone where to find you, as well as where to find your articles and everything that you have going on?
Yeah, so you can find my articles and stuff on golfchannel.com. We have a bunch of great stuff, our entire team coming out of the President's Cup, and it's going to be exciting to see, what we can do this next year. It's going to be interesting, certainly on the PGA Tour side of things, but also Twitter at Brentley GC. I wouldn't exactly consider myself an expert at social media, but I do try. So those are the 2 places, and I think that's fine by me. I'm not a big TikTok or anything like that. So,
well, if you get
TikTok, won't find me on there.
No. Brentley, I want to thank you so much for joining me here on the Joe Madden Sports Show. You guys, please go give him a follow. You can follow him on Twitter at Brentley GC. Thank you again for joining me.
Awesome. Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you.